2. Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association welcomes you to Reasonable Doubt with this very special guest, Neal Davis. How you doing, sir?
Not bad. How are you?
Rock and roll, doing fine, doing fine. Host, Justin Harris. How you doing, man?
We're good, man. How are you? You just got out of jury selection.
We did. So I'm back
you
down there.
Seated?
We got 12 in the box. Aggravated
All
sexual
right.
assault of a child out of Judge Martinez's court. Have
All
either
right.
of you tried anything out of Judge Martinez's court?
I am not. I think you're one of the first.
I think I'm the first too. I would like to say that I'm looking forward to see how Judge Martinez is going to preside over her first. I think it's her first bench trial. I know as a lawyer, right? She's tried, 1,000 cases. She's very seasoned prosecutor and defense side. I'm curious to see how her rulings are going to be. Judge Denise Collins, which we all are very familiar with, presided over the jury selection. She was in standard Judge Collins form. 2 hours later, I had 30 minutes to talk and see the jury. No, I kid. I love you, Judge Collins. I love you. I don't know if you're watching. Now, Neal, you got any stories with Judge
She watches
Collins?
every week. She watches every week.
What do you say, Neal? You sat a jury, I guess, in the former, I think she was 208.
Yeah, I think she was the 208. I never did. I don't think I ever tried a case in front of Judge Collins. I think I did a couple hearings, but I saw her last week because I was at NRG last week.
Yeah.
I got pushed off. I got rolled away, but she was there to pick a jury on a murder that I think Arthur Washington was going to try. And that was the first time I'd seen her since the pandemic. So it was nice. It was hugs, and we talked for a bit. And then when it got down to business, Judge Collins does what Judge Collins does. Get to business.
I will tell you this: while she spoke for an hour and a half, she covered everything, and for the first hour there was no nothing, but then the second 30 45 minutes she put it all up in a bow, and then bam came the strikes, and bam came a lot of the things that she set up. And so it was a pleasure to kind of see how she set that up, and then came in and just kind of nailed it on the back end. And I was able to do a voir dire that I was able to have a little bit more freedom to do the things I kind of wanted to, because she covered so much and eventually struck everyone that was there for cause. So I was really able to kind of look at the jury and in my opinion, have a good opportunity to select them.
Good.
But that was
She's got the experience, I'm sure.
Say again? Yeah, it was great. It was great, and because she's a legend and she's done awesome, and she hasn't missed a step. Now, one of the things that she did deny me, which I thought was, which was different from the last NRG cases that I have tried, is she didn't allow me to hand out my my handouts, and so it becomes.
What are your handouts?
I've narrowed my handout to one handout. It's a single page with the 4 kind of slides that I want everybody to remember, and that's the 4 kind of guideposts that I have. I was not able to provide that to the jury, and I think it affected. I think it affected their ability to see and comprehend the questions on the screen. Granted, nobody admitted to that, and we weren't able to strike anybody on that, but I did feel that without the handout, the people in the very back weren't able to see the screen, and maybe that affected their ability to answer and comprehend the scaled question that I was asking. So I didn't really like that. But other than that, it was fun.
Is the handout something that you just developed since doing trials in NRG?
It's like the big points on my voir dire, the 4 themes.
Yeah,
but things.
You haven't used the handout before NRG. It's something you developed to adapt to.
No, I used it every single time. This is the first time that I wasn't able to use my handout So I was very concerned about the jury being able to see the screen.
No, I get that. I'm asking, did you do that when you had trials at the at the CJC, or is it just something you've been doing
No.
at NRG?
It's just something I've been doing at NRG because of the
Because you've tried more cases there than anybody I've heard of.
It's a fifth jury trial.
Is it so?
Yeah.
So is this something you did from? Did you have handouts your first jury trial at NRG?
Yes, I've had jury handouts on every jury trial that I've had at NRG.
Oh, it's a good idea. I might steal that.
Well, except for this one, because it affected I thought it affected my ability to ask the questions and receive meaningful information. Ultimately, I'm very satisfied with the jury that came out. I'm very satisfied with the scores and the methods that we use. Turned out to be okay. It took a little bit more time, maybe. However, because Judge Collins covered a lot of things that I was going to cover, and the state covered, even though I'll reserve my comments till afterwards. Mr. Applebaum is an incredible attorney and an incredible district attorney. But I will say that because she covered a lot of the things that I was able to actually go into more depth into some of the questions that I've had and the scaled questions that I wanted to provide. And I received pretty good information. Interestingly, though, and Neal, not to date you, but you've been a lawyer probably 3 times as long as I have, okay? And you're a legend, and you're Neal Davis. So let me ask you this. So I'll rise for the veneer panel that's entering. That's we rise, right? I drop my pen or whatever, and as I bend over, I tear my pants. It is from the top of my ass crack to the middle of my legs underneath, right? I mean, it's like a tear this big, and I go like this. I go down, and it goes rip, and I come up like that. I'm like, oh my god! And I tell my brother who's sitting with me, I say, dude, I just ripped my pants, and he's like, no, you didn't. And he goes, let me see. So like I turn this way, and then his eyes just go, dude. So
just ripped your pants.
So we're about to sit down and do this voir dire, and my pants are torn. Okay, so I posed a question to the panel. Have you ever experienced that? And what did you do? Neal, you've tried 1,000 cases. You've ever had wardrobe malfunctions?
No, not like that. But man, that's something perfect to use. You get the jurors to start feeling sorry for you.
Yeah.
Or fumbling around and dropping pens and stuff and saying, this is probably one of the craziest days of my life or something. That's perfect. I wish that would have happened.
So get this, bro. So, all right, Bella, you're up. All right. And so, Pop, I go up. We're doing the voir dire, right? And we get to the part where we're explaining proof and presumptions of innocence and the burden. And so I step out. I say, hey, look, my suit's fine, right? Yes. I don't have a big tear in it. Absolutely not. And I turn it around and I bend over.
And show your ass to the jury.
And it has my ass and this big old tear. And I look back and I say, did everybody say? And they go, yes. And then we say, look, everything isn't always what it appears, isn't it? Let's talk about it. And then Pop.
Beautiful, man.
There you go. There you go. That's exactly what you roll.
Has this happened to you before?
No, it's never happened to me.
You know, I had a buddy who was flying in from New Orleans for a bankruptcy hearing, and it was like a fly in and fly out. We were gonna have lunch, and he landed in Houston. He's like, I ripped my pants on the plane. Like, I got a hearing in federal court. Is there anything that you can do? I was like, what do you mean? I'm not a tailor. And so I sent him over to Mike at Charbar, and like 9 o'clock in the morning, Mike was there, and he like sewed up his pants and sent him on his way. I guess I mixed Brad up with you, but good for you for like flipping that around and using that. That's brilliant.
Yeah, that's good. That's real good. And staples is always the answer. Get a stapler. And you're good.
So I put it on Facebook, like I'm like, oh my God, hey, Mayday, anybody? And Staples was like, out of 100 people surveyed, the answer is
Staples.
It was Staples, yeah. So,
yeah.
you'll know.
Yeah. I've
So
fixed my kids' clothes using staples before.
you know, so one of the comments was like, you should say like the winds of justice have changed. I thought about using that.
Yeah. Well, you got a jury
Okay.
that I bet likes you. I bet you they like you, which is going to be great.
What,
Yeah,
what
you're
are
real
you,
now.
What? Well, I mean, so we got a jury of 9. I'm not without comment. No comment up or back. Up. No comment one way or the other. But Katie Farrell is. Oh my God, she's here.
Surprise!
There she is.
Okay.
Surprise! Hi
Hey,
guys.
how are you doing?
Hello.
Katie
You
Farrell,
just
everybody.
missed JB talking about how his pants ripped during jury selection today in RG, and then he turned it into a reasonable doubt argument.
Well played.
Yeah, it's
Well
a
played.
bunch of hot air. Bunch of hot air.
In your hair, a bunch of hot air.
So we'll ask you, Kate. Have you ever had? Have you ever had? And will you share the worst lawyer or non-lawyer? We'll start with lawyer. Wardrobe malfunction.
Yes. I think it was like my second or third trial ever. I was a prosecutor. It was closing argument. I had just used the restroom. I'm in that great, pantsuit. And I give what I think is this stellar closing argument. And I sit down and my chief looks at me and I think he's like about to compliment me. And he's like, your fly is down.
Oh no!
Yep.
Closing argument?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, no, I was
man.
all up in front of the jury talking.
And so this is after you finished?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I guess the ultimate question is, did you win?
I did.
That's terrible.
Oh, they caught you with your fly down. You still won.
Yeah. Well,
Hey, you know
I'll
what's
take the wins how I can get them.
So you make every closing argument with your fly down.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Now.
That's my lucky sock.
well, one would say that creates a connection with the jury.
I'm
'cause
vulnerable. I'm there. I'm just a person, and now I always check my fly before I close.
Hey, on top of that, who remembers Kate Farrell as a prosecutor?
I do.
Oh,
You're in court 10, right?
Yeah, me too. Yeah, so do I. Neil, you remember that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I was in court 10 for a little while.
Yeah.
Yeah, her ability to check BS at the door was not fun for someone who deals in BS.
Well, Kate used to be a cop.
Yeah, for the military.
Yeah.
Yep. I was
Kate,
not a very good one, guys. I got to be honest. I did a lot of napping in my car.
That's good. It's good to know.
Yeah.
I think fun fact. I think Kate has actually thrown a grenade. Right?
I have a few grenades. Yeah. You have to.
Well, there was one where you almost killed everybody.
Okay. Killed everybody is strong. I almost injured myself and the sergeant who was training me.
Because I think he was like, throw it, and then you didn't.
Well, okay. So look, I don't know if you've ever held a grenade. It is, I thought I was like Billy Badass. I was going to go up there. I was going to pull that pin and I was going to throw it and everything was going to be great. Okay, first off, the pins are really hard to get out. Like the movies make it look super simple that it just comes out.
Your teeth.
Right. No, like I'm sitting there yanking on this thing and I finally get the pin out and then it kind of hit me that it was a grenade. And I may have tossed it in the most girly, with one foot kicking up. It was, I'm embarrassed. It was bad. It barely made it over the cement barrier that protects us, right on the other side. So everything kind of blew back at us. We were fine. He did tackle me to the ground when it barely made it over. My second one was much better though. I was much better after that.
Was your zipper open? Yes or no?
It probably was because there's 10 million buttons on those suckers. I probably missed a few buttons.
Neil, what is the what's the one time where you have felt behind in the foxhole in a jury trial what's a good trial story you got for us, man? Something that jury's in the box, or jury's coming out, or you're behind the foxhole. Tell us something that you got, Neal.
God.
So take near misses with military ordinance. Either story you've got.
And don't forget, Neal was a cop for a long time too. We got stories there.
Neal's a cop. I
true.
didn't know Neal was a cop.
Yeah, I was Houston police for a long time.
How long, dude?
Well, about 8 years. I was it was all in the 90s. It was a long time ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
What kind of beat you run?
Well, I was at Northwest, West Side for a little bit, and Central night patrol, and then I did a little stint with homicide, a little stint with robbery.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was back in the day when you could kind of transfer from division to division.
Is that when you guys used to smoke cigarettes in the homicide room and like?
No, we used to eat pizza at the scenes.
Oh.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah, first time I saw an autopsy, the guy I was with who was training me, he brought in cinnamon rolls, and he sat there and ate cinnamon rolls. And the first autopsy wasn't that bad. The second autopsy, I had to sit down. So the cinnamon rolls didn't help. Matter of fact, they made it worse.
I would imagine.
The first dead body you saw, did you puke?
I was gonna
No, not really. Dead bodies hadn't really bothered me because I was in the military too. But
my first one I puked. I'm not gonna lie. He had been in a barracks room for like 4 days with no AC.
Oh, terrible.
You know, the only dead bodies. I can't believe we're going off on this, but the only dead bodies that really spooked me were when I was on patrol, and you'd go to a fatality accident, and I mean, no matter what the fatality is, the person in the car could have absolutely no signs of injury. They're just dead in the car. It would just freak me out. I'd go home at night, have both hands on the steering wheel, and put on my seatbelt, but that would freak me out. But no, when I was there, we had cut up bodies, dismembered bodies, burned up bodies, floaters. The only thing I've never really seen is a jumper, which you don't want to see, and things like that. But no, I never really had problems with it. But
I just had the one. That was the first one I saw. It just, the smell. It was just so bad. I didn't like puke on the scene or anything. Well, we didn't know. It was called in as hazmat.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Like like there was some sort
hazardous
of odor.
Material.
Yeah, hazardous material. And so somebody thought there was something in this room. Surprise, it was a dead body. He had a heart attack. It sort of unfortunate, but it was just the smell. It was so bad. Like I saw a floater, which was pretty disgusting looking, but it wasn't.
And is this when you were military police, or was it? Where was it?
It was when I was in the Navy.
This was last week on the way to the grocery store.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was when I was in the Navy as a police officer. We were just the first one. We were just responding to a hazmat call to see what was going on.
I've never seen other than family, people who have passed. I've seen plenty of photos and such. I remember the first time as a defense attorney when I saw some photos that were just the first time I'd ever seen a dead body, the first time I'd ever seen somebody, a victim, somebody who's passed, and it was extraordinarily painful. I mean, it was something that, I'd never seen before. Allison Mathis has come on the show and talked about defense attorney PTSD and defense attorney kind of the images and the context that we work and live about can take a toll. And I remember the first deceased that I ever saw was pretty impactful to me. I've never seen one in person though.
Yeah. Well, this is the homicide detective that mentored me, and it's really heartless to say, but it's true. And I know Katie would agree with it, is that, I mean, you've got to look at dead bodies or that kind of evidence nowadays. You got to look at it and dehumanize. And what he said is that you don't look at it as a dead human being. You look at it as a piece of furniture with a hole in it.
Right.
And then once I did that, I never really had any problems. So, we do lots of murders, a lot of capitals and things like that. And you just look at it as it is. It's just a piece of picture. It's not hurting. It's not doing anything. It's heartless. But I mean, that's what we live in right now, you know?
You got to survive.
My dad was a homicide detective, and he said that the reason, like you see in cop shows, and the reason cops do it, the kind of the sick humor they use, or eating at the scene, or eating the autopsy, is a way to kind of dehumanize what you're doing.
That's
And
it.
it's not to be rude, it's for your own sake, to create that separation.
Yeah.
And that's the only way to make it through the job. You can't feel it all.
I mean, really, we all are dealing still in homicide. I mean, when you get a murder, a capital murder, or even just a really bad ag assault case or something like that, you can't bring it home. I mean, if you do bring it home, then I mean, you're uber stressed. You just leave it where it is, and don't think about it.
You know,
Oh, I dropped something.
I didn't introduce. Let me introduce Mark at Houston Media Source. Mark, Houston Media Source. What's up?
Doing the
Oh,
job.
Alias this week. Who's this John Fertile?
But I will tell you a story where I got really behind the eight ball, and it's all my law partner's fault, Wendell Odom, who I'm sure is.
Well,
We were defending somebody we called the little criminal up in Montgomery County. It was a stupid evading charge. He'd been in trouble before and Wendell had defended him. And this guy, he I don't know if it was really an evading. He was in his Yukon, GMC Yukon, and the cops tried to pull him over. There was no place to pull over. And when he did, he rolls down the window, throws out some dope. They get him for evading. They don't even get him for the dope, but they forfeited his Yukon. So we didn't know what the Yukon looked like, but we were going to deal with the forfeiture. So we go up to Montgomery County, and we're in Fred Edwards Court. I don't know if you remember Fred Edwards. He's in the 9th District Court. Phil Grant is on the bench there now. Phil's really good. And I don't do a lot up Montgomery County. But we were dealing with the forfeiture, and I went up there. Wendell says, just go up there. We're going to reset the case. It's just a reset. Just go up there, reset it. So I go up there, and Fred Edwards was not on the bench. I can't remember who the judge was. He was an old judge, nicest guy in the world, pleasant guy. He said, all right, you're here for this case. Yes. The prosecutor and I are both on the case. And judge says, okay, get ready to pick a jury. And I'm calling Wendell up, and I'm like, dude, he wants me to pick a jury now. I had to borrow paper and pen from the prosecutor, who had to borrow paper and pen from somebody else. And we're sitting there, had to pick a jury on a forfeiture case. I'd never tried a civil case in my life. It was a mess. I'd make objections like, you'd make in a criminal court. I'd do a voir dire like you do in a criminal court, trying to be, nice and personable and trying to get the jury to be on your side. It was crazy. But that's the worst feeling I ever felt. That was like back in the days when you hear Racehorse would give his associates a file and say, go down to the court and try this case. And that was it. You didn't know anything about it.
How many years were you in at that point, man?
Oh God, I don't know, 3 or 4 years maybe.
That is petrifying. That is absolutely petrifying.
And no, I mean, I'd done it enough with Wendell that it was cool. It's like, okay, well, you've heard all the stories with Percy and Racehorse and all that. And he's like, well, what the hell, gonna do it. And I sat down and did it. And we tried it in 2 days, and we actually won.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
We actually won, and we won 10-2, which was great. I heard it was 10-2, and I thought, crap. Well, maybe next time. And it's a civil case. What? This is cool. So,
and you're taking your board eye out, and you're like, okay, not beyond a reasonable doubt, preponderance of the evidence. How am I gonna? Okay, it's like 51-49, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
I don't know how I would do with that.
Yeah, I have.
Good job.
I have the spiel on reasonable doubt that I do on all the levels, on all the burdens of proof, and I use a cop hypothetical. Katie, we never tried a case against each other, but I use a cop hypothetical and go up everything, and usually you get up to beyond. There's reasonable doubt, but it has to be beyond a reasonable doubt. Well, hell, I didn't even get there. I was like preponderance of the evidence, and that's all you need. So
how do you but for real, did you just snort? Who snorted? Was that you, Kate? Somebody
Oh,
snorted. No. Hey, how do you explain reasonable doubt? What are your tricks and theories? All of us here uh, do not have anywhere near the experience as you, Neal. We
Oh,
all have our own tricks of the trade, but tell
no.
me, well, what is your explanation of reason? How do you do that?
Well, you guys have just as much experience as me, but I do this little, like I said, this little hypothetical with reasonable doubt. A lot of people use those charts. Rose Merchant, when I first started out, gave me one of those charts, with the blocks and everything. Well, what I did was, I would go through everything. Well, first off, you know what the state's going to do. You know what the judge is going to do. Reasonable doubt. It's common sense. It doesn't have to be 100%. It doesn't have to be this or that. It's just, it's in your gut. And what I wanted to point out was that there's a lot more to it. And so, the first levels of the burden of proof, I use this hypothetical that I'm a cop. And what I do is I said everybody's like, I was a cop when I was in patrol, I was night shift. I worked, one of the places I worked was Spring Branch. I say, okay, let's say it's a Tuesday night. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, Tuesday, Wednesday morning, Tuesday night. Nothing goes on, at least in Houston at that time. Nothing goes on Tuesday night. So I'm just driving my car down Long Point, this long street. And along Long Point, there's all these shopping centers, one little shopping centers. And as I'm going down the street, I see an Hispanic male in black and black pants, and he's carrying a white shirt, and he's walking down, walking across the parking lot. Can I stop him? I ask him an easy question. Can I stop him? No. Why? There's no evidence. And then you kind of heighten it up, and you get to probable cause. When I say there's probable cause, I say I'm driving down the street and I see three guys in a back alleyway, and they're smoking a cigarette. I can tell they're smoking a cigarette because I can see the light on the cigarette. So can I do anything about that? Can I stop and investigate what's going on? Sure, there's a reasonable suspicion that something's going on, because nobody should be in an alley at 3 o'clock in the morning when nothing's going on. So I pull my car over and I stop and I get out. And as I walk toward them, I smell the distinct odor of burnt marijuana. And I know it because I grew up in the 70s and I know what it smells like.
Yeah.
So, and I have the training and experience and all that crap that you're going to hear. And so I go through probable cause. And then when I get to preponderance of the evidence and clear and convincing, and beyond reasonable doubt, I used to, I haven't done it in a while. I used to get boxes, and I'd get a bunch of empty boxes, and the DAs were like, what the hell are you doing with all these with these boxes? They think they're full. But I'd take 2 empty boxes and I put them up there and I say, preponderance of the evidence is civil. And in the civil world, the defendant can have a box full of evidence, the plaintiff can have a box full of evidence, and nobody wins. I put a piece of paper on one of them. I say, that party wins. Now, clear and convincing is what they use if CPS wants to take away your child. And so you go through and you try to pick somebody who has a young kid, and you say, okay, well, you have a young kid. I'm just going to put you in this hypothetical. Say your next door neighbor calls CPS. They say you're negligent, and they're going to take your kid away. And you're going to go to trial, and you're going to try this case, and you want to keep your kid. Well, here I got bunches of boxes of evidence. I take another box and I put it on one of the boxes, and I say, do you think that's enough evidence for them to take your kid away? And of course they'll say no. And then you put another box, and then you say, how many boxes of evidence would you require the state to have to take your kid away? Unlimited amount. Well, that's clear and convincing evidence. We're talking beyond a reasonable doubt.
I like that.
That's really good.
And it's not a gut feeling. It's not common sense.
That's really good.
So we were using that for a long time.
Stealing that.
Boxes.
That's really, really good.
It's really good. I like it. Any like visual aid like that, that's fantastic.
Yeah, when you put the visuals up and you do the boxes, people get people really get involved in it. And that's one of the things that concerns me with NRG. And what you did with the handouts. Katie wasn't here, but he had handouts to pass out because you can't see. When I went to NRG, I've only been once, and that was last week. And I'm supposed to try a capital murder in Josh Hill's court, and I don't want to because I don't like the setup. And it's not that I'm not comfortable in that setup.
Not good, man. It's not good. I just don't think it's not
Yeah,
good.
it's not. And I don't even use a PowerPoint anymore. I had stopped using a PowerPoint pre-pandemic for most cases. But even without having the visuals like that, it's still just not. It's not adequate.
How do you, Kate? Because you have your share of not guilties. How do you explain reasonable doubt? What is your
So
go?
I do like a Tylenol analogy. Have you heard about it?
I
Uh,
haven't. No, I mean, I haven't.
Yeah, that's
so
fantastic. The ball met. Yes.
yeah, so I use that one because typically the judge and the state have already kind of gone through that, and some of the judges are stealing that, and so I like to talk about it from like I usually kind of ask a question like, how big of a reasonable doubt do you need? And you get a lot of blank stares, and I'm like, okay, let's work through this. And does anybody remember the Tylenol scares back in the 1980s? And usually somebody will know about it, and I'll have them tell me, there was somebody tampering with Tylenol in Chicago and they were putting poison in it.
Okay.
And yeah, and it killed people. And at the time, they had no idea how widespread this tampering was. They did a national recall of all the Tylenol pills. And so, your brother, your sister, your little kid has a headache or is sick, and you go into your cabinet and you see that Tylenol bottle. Do you give
No,
them that Tylenol?
no,
No. Is
no.
it a big doubt? Is it a big chance? No. But is it worth it? No. Same thing
That's
here.
good.
His liberty is not worth it. So it's,
That's good.
I do it more in like the size, and it can just be this small little thought in the back of your head. But if you have it, that's reasonable doubt.
Right. Yeah,
That's good.
Katie told me about that a while back, and I love that. And I use it still. I don't really use it with my reasonable doubt, what reasonable doubt is,
Mhm.
but I use it as, and just like Katie said, how much reasonable doubt do you need? Because some people will require a lot of reasonable doubt. Some people will only require a little bit of reasonable doubt.
Right.
Well, we talk about, all of that. And I also talk about the evidence. And one other thing that I like to really interject in there too, especially if there is eyewitness issues or ID issues, is Timothy Cole. That's a fantastic example to give about Timothy Cole. When the DA is going to get up there and say, well, and the judge will say, well, you can't, if you witnessed a crime, you can't be part of this because you witnessed a crime. You knew what happened. The only way you would know a crime would happen is if you witnessed it. 100% you would know. And then I would say, well, that's not necessarily true. And you give the story about Timothy Cole, and it shuts people down.
Give it.
Well,
can
I
you-
always tell
I'm
them.
What's
missing
the
it. I'm
Timothy
missing
Cole
it.
story?
It's not registered.
Well-
I'm registering, but I don't. I need the story.
Okay. Well, this is what I say. Well, everybody thinks it. Do people really believe that? Well, I don't start off with do people really believe. We say, well, the state said that the only way that you would know 100% what happened is if you saw it. Well, let me tell you this story about this young man who was going to college at Texas Tech. First kid in his family to go to college. The first person in his family to go to college ever. He's a young black man. He studied hard, never got in trouble his entire life. He's walking home from the library, which I'm not sure if that's quite true, but he's walking home, and the police stopped him and said, "You fit the identification of a suspect in a rape down the street." And they took him into custody. They took him back to the scene. The victim said, "Yes, that's him." And he said, "No, it's not me." "Yes, that's him." So they put him in jail. They go through the process. He goes to trial because he maintains, "I did not do this." And he goes to trial. In trial, the victim gets up on the stand, points to him, and says, "That's the person who did it. I'm 100% sure that's the person who did it." He was convicted. He goes to prison. His family fights as hard as they can. They finally get a hold of the Innocence Project. DNA has developed so much so that DNA becomes a tool for exoneration. The Innocence Project runs his DNA, and sure enough, he's not the victim. He's not the guy who did it. Matter of fact, the guy who did it, they found later, was in a cell 3 cells down from Timothy Cole when he
Oh,
was found guilty and heard him wailing, crying.
Wow.
And it's all fine. He's exonerated. The problem is his exoneration came 12 years too late. He died in prison.
oh,
Mm.
They have a statue of him in at Lubbock.
Right. And they have a law now that if and you read about it all the time, if someone has been exonerated and they have to be fully found innocent by a court, they get $80,000 a year for every year they spend in prison, and they call that the Timothy Cole Fund. But that's a great
Yeah.
story to bring to these people who, by the time we get to voir dire, are so convinced that these two others, and I'm not bad mouthing DAs or judges, but they've wrapped themselves in the American flag. They're here to protect you, and my guy who is sitting here is guilty just because he's here.
Literally,
I,
the first sentence. Oh, go for it, Kate. Yeah.
oh,
go.
sorry. I was just going to say on that, I've used it just a couple of times because the state has been saying that a lot lately about, if you're an eyewitness, you have no doubt. And because everybody watches the true crime documentaries these days, I'm like, does anybody know the number one reason for DNA exonerations or what it was overturning? Eyewitness testimony. And
Wow, that's
every
good.
panel, somebody has known it. So then that juror feels very empowered. There, so you can always just ask them. I've never had a panel that somebody didn't know the answer to it.
Right.
That's really great. That is incredible. That's an amazing. Just you can do the Cole story because it's a great story. Follow it up with the ID. The number one reason people go to prison because of this fake IDs and or false IDs, and DNA exonerates them.
Yeah,
That's great.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you. I was going to say, I'll tell you another one that I stole from Jordan Lewis.
Let's hear.
Stole this from Jordan Lewis, and it is fantastic. So, I talk about the burden of, the burden's always on the state. I always say, my client, if you really think about it, who's on trial today? It's not my client. It's the state's
evidence.
The state's evidence on trial. That is the burden. And so at the very end of my voir dire, I always say, do we got some baseball fans in here? Who loves the Astros? I haven't used it since the cheating scandal. But anyway, I always say, all right, let's imagine we're the home team. We're the Astros. The state is a visiting team. Bottom of the ninth, we're leading 6-2. Do we even take the field? No, we don't. We've already won. They didn't bring enough. And that's, I set it up for the fact, especially in cases where I know I'm not putting on a defense, right? I want that in their mind that we're not taking, because we already won. They didn't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt.
That's great.
We don't have to take the field.
That's good.
That's really good.
Yeah,
and so you're just kind of setting that up.
All of that stuff.
And I have one, we talk about, especially like in the middle of voir dire or at the end of voir dire, but and I'm giving away a lot of secrets.
Bring them.
They're not secrets, but I got something from Dee McWilliams. I don't know if you guys remember Dee. Dee and George and Wendell and I are the ones who were on Andrew Yates. Dee was he was a really great young lawyer. He ended up going up to Georgetown and got with the DA's office up there. But Dee and I have been friends for years and years. But I got this from Dee. When I start voir dire, like ripping my pants or whatever, I try to, you always try to get that connection with the jury. And I always start off with, my story, and which I hate doing because now I feel like it's so egotistical, but sometimes I can add funny stuff, especially when my kids were little. I could add funny little stories about my kids, but single dad, went to law school at night, was a cop, was in the Navy, worked in Russia.
Sounds like my beginning.
yeah. And then, I'll get them laughing. I'll tell some self-deprecating joke about my hair or my size, 5'4", whatever. But then I say, okay, I'm trying to wake them up. And then I say, okay, this is the first question I ask to every jury. This is what I tell them. And I say, I'll just a show of hands, okay? Just a show of hands. It's late in the day. This is an easy question. I say, as we sit here today and we talk, we go through all this, I want you to raise your hand if you believe that right now there is an innocent man in prison. And never have I had not everybody raise their hand. Of course, if there's that one guy or person not raising their hand, they're getting struck.
Yeah, you're right.
Everybody raises their hand, and they say, "All right, that's why we're here." And then you start.
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, use that. I feel free to use that, but
I steal everything.
Yeah,
all
absolutely.
this is being recorded. Yes,
it turns everything around. It turns everything around right off the bat. You get friendly with them, and then you get friendly with these potential jurors. You want to know as much as you can, and you flip it around and say, try to get them to forget everything they just heard.
That coming out strong after the judge has already said he's all but guilty. The prosecutor goes up there and basically said he's all but guilty, and it's something to shift the feeling and the presence of, hey, look, for a freaking second, can you just please look at it from like this side?
Yeah.
Can we just presume he's innocent? That's what I did. I walked out there and I said, why else would there not be any medical records at all? Why? Let's just look at it because the kid lied. Yeah, because the kid lied. Why else wouldn't there be any DNA? Let's just pretend that this guy over here is innocent. Why else? Because she lied. Why else wouldn't there be any witnesses or any other proof? Because she lied. And then and I was looking for some other way to bridge it, and I just kind of went out and said it, but that is way more articulate.
Well, I'll tell you something else too. I mean, since we're talking about the voir dire and everything, and I think one of the reasons why I was coming in today, and I think we got to have a lot of talk. I was talking to Fickman about this, but I think we need to talk, getting back on the board and everything, is about federal stuff, because federal voir dire
segue to that
is completely different than state voir dire.
How?
Completely.
Zero clue, please. I have no clue.
Every judge is different, but the judge has complete control of what is presented at voir dire, and you are very limited in what you can do during voir dire. In state voir dire, you're talking to the jurors one-on-one. You're bringing up general issues, and you're starting to try your case when you're doing a state voir dire. In federal, you can't. You can voir dire generally on the laws. You can voir dire generally on certain issues that may come up, like maybe duress or alibi or self-defense. But you cannot get specific in like, well, what would you feel if there was no evidence there? Or what is reasonable doubt? You can't do reasonable doubt. I can't do my little reasonable doubt spiel, because the Fifth Circuit has already defined reasonable doubt, and they're going to get that definition when they get the jury instructions. So it is so much harder. Now, every judge is different. Judge Ellison, Keith Ellison, he allows you a lot more flexibility when you voir dire, and you can maybe get into certain specifics that you want to with a specific juror to try to find out if you want to cut them or not. But he'll shut you down too, especially if the government objects, and the government will object. Even to this day, I've had, I don't know how many federal trials. Even to this day, I'm never quite sure how I'm going to voir dire in a federal case, especially in David Hittner's court. I've tried 4 or 5 cases in David Hittner's court, and there are so many lawyers, both government and defense attorneys and civil attorneys, who are intimidated by Judge Hittner because he has a very strong personality. I'm one of the few people who enjoy trying a case in front of Hittner. He's tough. He can be what seems to be a bully, but if you're not intimidating, you fight back, he respects that, and he'll give you some leeway. He'll let you try your case, and he'll tell you he'll let you try your case, and he'll tell you that he'll let you voir dire, just like a state voir dire, because he at one point was a state civil judge, but he does not. And I can't tell you how many times I've been shut down, and finally I said, "Okay, Judge, I give up. I'm done. I'm through." So you're very, very limited.
I did very limited federal practice. So I do federal work, but it's embarrassing to say that I do federal work, and quite frankly, in front of you. I mean,
no, not at all.
well, but the few that I have, I love the jury charge, and I have thought about incorporating some of those things, or at least some of those themes from the federal jury charge into the state side.
I
That's all my comment is.
Yeah, no, I take a lot of federal stuff and incorporate it in my state practice because it's so regulated, so enumerated, and it's so codified that, like in sentencing, we do a lot of child porn cases, which are hard cases to even be involved in just because of the nature of the charge, right?
Yeah.
So when I'm in state court, and I've done this the last 2 or 3 times I've been in state court, and I've pled to a PSI or something. You know, the what are called 18 USC 3553A factors are factors that the judge has to consider in a federal sentencing. Now, in federal sentencing, and one of the things you can't you can't voir dire on sentencing because the judge sentences the defendant, not a jury unless it's a death penalty case. And Wendell and I have a death penalty case, and we are, you're looking at a lot of jury charges and ways to voir dire jurors in a federal case on a capital murder, which, I mean, we could do a whole reasonable doubt on the Colorado.
Isn't that capital murder like the oldest case in the federal docket right now?
Ever. I think it's the oldest case ever. The death penalty case we have is going on 15 years old. We filed a speedy trial motion to dismiss on speedy trial grounds, but in the alternative, we wanted to strike the death penalty, which is really what we were kind of hoping the court would do, just strike the death penalty.
And I don't mean to derail, but can you talk a little bit about, speaking of differences between federal and state? You'd mentioned this previously on your appearance, where on a federal case, you got to go up to Washington, D.C. and have a meeting with Justice Department. Like, can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because the whole show is supposed to be a little more focused on federal. Right. And I had a lot of questions about what the differences are between federal and state. Like, what? There's no federal parole? That's crazy. And, but talk about the federal death penalty practice.
Sure. Okay. Well, in a federal death penalty, people get confused. How can it be a federal death penalty? I mean, like Oklahoma City bombing a federal building, or terrorists, of course. But in some federal death penalty scenarios, it's a murder with some sort of federal jurisdiction involved. So in mine, it was an illegal immigrant smuggling ring, wherein they killed 2 illegal immigrants. I just prefer to call them immigrants. 2 immigrants. They killed 2 immigrants, and because it was, an illegal alien smuggling ring and there was a murder, the feds decided to try to seek death. So in order to seek death in the federal system, you just don't, the U.S. attorney doesn't say, we seek death, like the DA can. What you have to go through a whole process. And the process is, first, the U.S. attorney's office here locally has to determine whether or not they're going to seek death. And if they do, they write a memorandum and they send it to Washington, DOJ. DOJ has a unit called the Capital Crimes Unit who makes a recommendation to the Attorney General whether or not to seek death. So the memo goes to the CCU, and the defense has the opportunity to present any mitigating evidence to the CCU for them not to seek death. Then we'll go up to DC and we'll talk about it. We'll make a presentation. Why?
And just really quickly, what type of mitigating evidence about your client, about the crime, or both?
Both.
Okay.
Absolutely both. Usually, though, it's going to be about your client.
Okay.
And when right off the bat, when it's going to be you'll know it's going to be a federal death penalty case, you start getting funding because nobody can hire for a death penalty case, period. You get a mitigation specialist to start looking deep into what could be mitigating about that person. It could be anything. It could be, he's beaten up as a kid. Our client was from El Salvador. He grew up during the Civil War. That's mitigating evidence. He's never been in trouble before. That could be mitigating evidence. But you try to bring mitigating evidence, or if there's issues with the case itself, like something wrong with the investigation or DNA, or maybe there's just not enough evidence to get it over that bar, you present that to the CCU, and you go up there for a day and you
So I'm going to stop you really quick just on another question that you just hit.
Sure.
What is it like getting funds in federal court for something like you said, a mitigation specialist, expert? Is it pretty easy? Are they pretty
Harder than hell.
okay?
Harder than hell.
Really?
Pay for your own plane ticket to Washington?
No, you get that because you'll be
Oh,
court
okay.
appointed. You're a CJA attorney, but
Uh.
But
you know,
on the experts getting funding for them.
yeah, the budgeting is atrocious, especially in the Fifth Circuit. Now, every circuit is different, but the Fifth Circuit has always been tough getting funding. Now, I can't remember the report. I have it in my office, and one day I'll try to bring it up. But there was a report that was done, a federal report that was done, I think in 2007. And the median cost to try a federal death penalty case is over $1 million.
Oof.
And they have statistics that say those people those teams that were granted funding that were more than appropriate, or they're appropriate or more, which you want $2 or $3 million to try to one of these cases. The outcome is, of course, completely different than those where they get under $1 million, and especially $150,000. We were granted $80,000 by the Fifth Circuit. $80,000.
Wow.
We fought like hell on that. A big difference too between federal capital practice and state capital practice is that the feds, the government, the Office of Courts, I can't remember what it's called right now because it's too late, but they will give you a resource council to help you. And our resource council has been from Jersey, from Florida. They come in and they help. And this resource council, fantastic lawyers, Steve Patulski, he's from Jacksonville. He does a lot of capital work in Puerto Rico. He's tried lots of capital cases. He and I worked on a budget that, we submitted a budget that was 90 pages long. We finally got our budget up to $200,000. And for a death penalty capital case, it was already authorized. And the secret to us, though, to what we did to try to get rid of the funding problem, and thank God we have a fantastic judge. Ken Hoyt is a fantastic judge. He allowed us to bring in a whole public defender's office. I was able to drum up the public defender's office in Maryland, Jim Wida, and he had 2 other lawyers who were helping. We have complete funding now. I have a team. Matter of fact, the teams that are on this death penalty case consist of us and the public defender's office in Maryland, and the other authorized co-defendant has David Adler and Eddie Millette, and they have the capital habeas unit out of Philly.
Oh.
And so the government here has never met capital teams this big. We'll have 5, 6, 7, 8 people on our team. Actually, we probably have almost a dozen people on my team. I can't believe it. And this was after we did the state. I tried that state death penalty case 2 years ago. I thought the funding in the state was wonderful. We did get plenty of funding. We had a really good team, but nothing like you see in the federal team.
Are you have you been practicing law for ever? No, because look.
I started late, man. I've only been practicing maybe 15 years. 14.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, you said you had a previous career, you get to law. Yeah. I have been clawing my way to get to half of, and I mean this, to get to the half of the level and qualifications that you have.
No.
But I mean it. How in the world how did you get there? I mean, where did you come from? How did that even happen? That you're trying capitals and you have these death capitals that, I've been trying to reach for 13 years and I'm not even halfway to it. How did you get there?
I got lucky. I mean, I got real lucky because I started late. I got out of law school when I was 42 and I'm 56 now, going on 57. So I've only been practicing that long. But when I was in law school, I got introduced to George Parnham and my law partner, Wendell Odom, who isn't here, but I will say this, Wendell is one of the best lawyers in this country. And
hands down, 100%.
Yeah. And Wendell, if I had a choice, of course, to go to the DA's office because I was an ex-cop, or go to Wendell. And I remember Kate Dolan calling me up saying, listen, what are you going to do? You want to go to the DA's? You want to stay with Wendell? And I was like, I'm going to go poor. I was a single dad raising 3 kids all by myself. And I was like, am I going to take that jump? I'm not sure because I got to have to get insurance and all this stuff. Well, I went with Wendell, and within like 11 months, I picked up the Baby Grace case, and the reason why I took it, which was kind of silly to take, because thank God they didn't seek death, but the reason why I took it, because I knew how these crimes are supposed to be, because I've been in it for so long. I was a cop. I know how they should be investigated. Katie does. You guys do. You guys have dealt with it more than enough to understand how it is. But I kind of started off on that level. Katie did too. I mean, Katie was a cop for a long time. She understands this crap. Her and I sit there and talk cop stories all night long.
That will be next week.
Well, JV, I feel you. I graduated.
1 minute, Katie. Last word and send us out.
Well, I was going to say on what you said, a colleague, a friend from law school is now partners with them, Brian Hobson, and he has gotten to do this amazing work that I'm sitting here like we graduated at the same time, and it's because he fell in with Wendell and Neal, and he's fantastic on his own right, but
Yeah.
I mean that class that you came out of, Katie, is
it's a good class.
We were looking at pictures of you and Jessica and Brian and everybody else out of that class. Fantastic. I mean, look at Katie. My God, she's got more not guilties than I've ever had.
She has a lot.
As a defense attorney, no doubt.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
For sure.
I've got a lot of the other way too, though. So.
Well, yeah.
When you're a prosecutor.
Yeah, you just jump into it.
Oh.
Wendell, just jump into it and go. We got this death penalty.
Try anything. That's my motto. I'll try anything.
I mean, that's what Racehorse would do. That's what Percy would do. Mike DeGuerin, Dick DeGuerin, all these guys. Cogdell, dear God, Cogdell, it's crazy. So I got lucky. I mean, I really got lucky because I ended up with Wendell, and then you get with all these other just super cool lawyers, and I just sit there and watch these guys and try to soak in as much, and then just kind of try to tailor it to myself. I watch you guys, man. I've watched Justin pick a jury. Fantastic. I mean, and I remember when you were weren't you interning with Dorian or something?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One of the best things I've ever, and I've used, is Justin uses a parachute. I stole it from you a couple times. You're going to jump out of the plane.
Yeah.
With a parachute and reasonable doubt argument. I forget, but I used it a couple times, and this stuff's genius.
Yeah, absolutely. But the one thing I've learned, and Katie knows, is I call Katie constantly, especially DWIs. Dear God, I'm clueless now. I don't do enough DWIs. But the one thing I've learned is that when you get with somebody, I mean, even though I'm with Wendell, we're constantly calling and talking to people everywhere. Just don't be afraid. I think a lot of lawyers may be afraid to ask questions because they feel like they're stupid. Screw that. And if you want to do the best for your client, you want to do the best you can. You ask other people. And I tell you another thing too. I'm working a case right now with Mike DeGuerin, younger Mike, and that is one of I can't tell you how much I admire him because he is so uber prepared. He knows his case inside and out. And he learned that from his dad. He learned that from his uncle. And Mike DeGuerin is fantastic because he's always just crazy completely compared. We have a federal case that we may be trying, that we probably are going to try in Hitler's court, and we're talking almost every day about it. And I'm totally amazed at what Mike knows. And he's fantastic. He knows that law inside and out. But we do need to go into a lot of federal stuff because and one of the things that I wanted to suggest with HCCLA is that maybe we try to get more people involved in the federal court, having maybe some sort of committee or federal court liaison with the judges and the judiciary there. And I know people.
Not to stop you, Neal, but we have.
I love it. And
we're maybe off air.
Nominating Neal Davis as the federal liaison. We got to wrap up. Mark's giving me
We're out.
Justin,
I think we're already out. I think he already shut us down.